Welcome back to second session of literary theory. We stopped the last time on new historism and the cultural criticism. New historism emerged in the 1980s as a reaction against formalism, exclusive focus on texts. This approach insisted that literature cannot be understood apart from its historical and cultural context, unlike older historical criticism that treated context as mere background. New historism sees texts and the context as mutually con constitutive. Literature both reflects and actively shapes the cultural and that produces it power structures, ideologies, and social conditions that do not just influence what gets written, they embedded in the very language and the forms available to writers. Now, for example, the English sonnet from form wasn't just a neutral structure, it carried associations with courtly love, Petrarchan conventions, and specific gender ideologies. When Shakespeare wrote sonnets, he was working within these cultural meanings, sometimes reinforcing them, sometimes changing them, but never outside them from itself is historical and ideological, not neutral or universal. Um, Key areas of analysis. Let us talk about historical content, examining economic systems, political structures, social hierarchies, and the cultural norms of the Texas era. Power analysis, how Texas represent, reinforce, or challenge dominant power relations and ideologies. Cultural production, literature as one cultural practice among many interacting with legal documents, popular culture, and social rituals. Uh, New historicists analyze literary texts alongside other cultural documents, legal records, uh, conduct manuals, political pamphlets, popular ballads. All these texts circulate in the culture, influencing each other. A play doesn't just reflect pre-existing cultural attitudes, it participates in forming and contesting them. Now let's go to the key principles of new historianism, or historicism. No privileged texts, literary works aren't inherently superior to other cultural documents. All texts are material for analysis. Circulation of social energy, cultural meanings, and power dynamics flow between different types of texts and practices. Thick description, detailed analysis of special historical moments and cultural contexts. Uh, um, Anecdotes matter, small historical details can illuminate large cultural pattern. Skepticism about objectivity, all historical interpretations is shaped by the historian's own cultural position. Then containment and supervision. Texts may simultaneously resist and reinforce dominant ideologies. Present concerns our contemporary interests shape which historical issues we notice and care about. We read Renaissance texts for anxieties about gender or colonialism partly because those are our concerns now. This isn't a flaw. It's inevitable and it can be productive if we're conscious of it. Now let's go to the post-colonial criticism. Post-colonial criticism A vital branch of cultural studies, examines the literature produced during and after colonialism. This approach analyzes how colonial powers use the literature to justify domination. Now colonized people resist through counter narratives, and how post-colonial writers reclaim cultural identity. Key concepts include othering, representing colonial peoples as fundamentally different and inferior, hybridity, mixing of cultural forms, and the lasting psychological and cultural impacts of colonial role. Uh, that persists long after political independence. Now let's move to colonial discourse. In three major areas of post-colonial analysis. Colonial discourse, analyzing how European literature represented colonized people and lands, often through stereotypes and exoticization that served imperial interests. Edwards said concepts of Orientalism exemplify this analysis, writing back post-colonial authors responding to colonial Western texts by retelling stories from colonized perspectives. Examples include Jane Rice, while the Sargasso Sea, rewriting Jane Eyre, or Chinua attributes things fall apart, countering heart of darkness. Cultural identity, examining how colonized people maintained, reconstructed, or invented cultural identity under colonial domination, and in its aftermath, language choice becomes particularly significant. Should post-colonial writers use colonizers' language, reaching wider audiences but accepting linguistic imperialism, or indigenous languages asserting cultural authenticity but limiting readership? There is no simple answers. Writers make different choices for different reasons. Now let's move to example post-colonial reading. Reading Rudyard came through post-colonial theory reveals how the novel romanticizes British role in India while simultaneously betraying anxieties about colonial control. The protagonist's ability to move between Indian and the British identity suggests both fascinating with Indian culture and the colonial fantasy of mastery and control. Uh, The idea that the British can know India better than Indians know themselves. Kim mentors include both Indians and British, but ultimate authority resists or rests with the British characters. The novel both loves India and insists on British role, revealing the contradictions at colonialism's heart. The impact of new historicism and the cultural criticism. New historicism and the cultural criticism reminds us that literature is always embedded in specific historical moments and power relations. These approaches have expanded our understanding of what counts as literature, worth studying, bringing attention to previously marginalized voices and texts. They've also made us more aware of how our own historical moments shape what we notice and value in texts from other eras. By situating literature within its cultural metrics, we gain richer, more nuanced interpretations that acknowledge literature's role in shaping and being shaped by the societies that produce it. Literature isn't an escape from history and politics. It's deeply embedded in them. Recognizing this doesn't diminish literature's value. It shows how literature participates in the ongoing negotiation of cultural meanings, power relations, and social possibilities. Now let's go to biographical and sociological criticism. Biographical and sociological approaches represent two complementary ways of connecting literary texts to their real-world contexts. Biographical criticism examines how an author's life experiences, relationships, beliefs, and personal history illuminates their work. Sociological criticism views literature as both a productive of social conditions and an influence on society, analyzing how texts reflect, critic, or reinforce social structures, class relations, economic systems, and cultural values. It asks who has access to literary and publication. How does literature represent different social classes? How do economic systems shape what gets written and read? These approaches connect individual lives and social cultures to literary production reminds us that literature emerges from real human beings living in real social conditions, while we should introduce texts to mere reflections of biography or sociology. Understanding these contexts enriches our appreciation and interpretation. Biographical criticism. This approach assumes that understanding an author's life can enrich our interpretation of their work. A writer traumas, relationships, political commitments, and personal struggles often find expression, sometimes direct, sometimes disguised in their fiction and poetry. Knowing that Charlotte Bronte worked as a governess helps us understand the authenticity and the emotional resonance of Jane Eyre's experiences, recognizing Sylvia's Blatt's struggles with depression as a dimension to poems like Lady Lazarus. And Daddy, when she writes, dying is an art, like everything else, I do it exceptionally well. We hear not just artistic persona, but genuine psychological anguish. However, we must be careful. Not everything in a text directly reflects the author's life, and imaginative transformation matters as much as raw experience. Shakespeare wrote brilliantly about being a king, but he was never one. Emily Dickinson wrote passionately about love and loss, though she lived a repulsive life. Three key considerations in biographical criticism, illuminating contexts. Biographical information can clarify obscure references, explain works, geniuses, or reveal which experiences inspired fictional events. This contextual knowledge often enriches appreciation without determining interpretation. Internationality debate: how much should an author's stated intentions matter? The international fallacy warns against conflict. Conflating what authors say they meant with what texts actually mean, as texts often excuse or contradicts authorial intention. Uh, Cautions and limits. Overreliance on biography can reduce complex works to simply autobiography. Not everything in a text directly reflects the author's life, and imaginative transformation matters as much as raw experience. But they shape, distort, and fictionalize as the speaker in a poem isn't necessarily the poet. Characters are simply the author in disguise. Biography provides context and not explanation. Now let's move to social criticism, detailed explanation. Sociological approaches examine literature as a social institution. How do economic systems, class structures, gender relations, and other social forces shape what gets written, published, and read? How does literature in turn influence social attitudes and behaviors? This criticism often focuses on representation, which groups appear in literature, how they are portrayed, and whose perspectives are privileged or marginalized. For most of literary history, working class people, women, racial minorities, and LGBTQ plus people were either absent from literature or represented through stereotypes. When they do appear, how are they portrayed? Um, as fully human with complex motivations, or as type serving the narrative needs of privileged protagonists? Now let's move to conditions of production. I mean, the three sociological areas of analysis. Conditions of production: who has access to education, literacy, and the publishing opportunities. Economic and the social factors determine whose stories get told and whose remain silent. Representation and ideology: how does text represents or represent different social groups? Do they challenge or reinforce stereotypes? Literature can naturalize social hierarchies or expose their constructedness. Reception and impacts: how do different social groups read and interpret texts? Literature can reinforce social norms, provide critique, or inspire social change through affecting leaders' consciousness and empathy. Now let's go to example feminist sociological reading. Kate Chopin said a weekend can be read biography. Chopin herself challenges conventional gender roles, and sociologically the novel critics late 19th century restrictions on women's independence, sexuality, and self-expression. The protagonist is tragic and reflects the limited options available to women who rejected social expectations in that era. The novel both documents historical conditions and contributed to changing consciousness about women's rights. It was highly controversial when published, condemned as immoral, and Chopin's career suffered, but later generations recognized it is as a powerful feminist text. Now let's go to the senses, biographical and sociological together. Biographical and sociological criticism work best when they enrich rather than replace textual analysis. Biography provides context that can deepen understanding, but the text must still be engaged on its own terms. Similarly, sociological awareness of how literature functions with social systems should complement, not substitute for careful reading or individual works. These approaches remind us that literature emerges from real human lives and the social conditions while also transcending its original to speak to readers across time and place. Shakespeare's plays emerged from specific conditions: Elizabethan theater, political anxieties about succession, religious conflicts, but they continue to mean something to us in radically different circumstances. Understanding original contexts enriches our reading without imposing texts in their historical moments. Now let's move to archetypal and the mythological criticism. Introduction. Archetypal criticism identifies universal symbols, character types, narrative patterns, and themes that recur across different cultures and historical periods, drawing heavily in Carl Jung's theory of the collective unconscious, the idea that humanity shares a deep reservoir of primordial images and patterns. This approach seeks to explain why certain stories feel family even when we encounter them for the first time. Myth, fairy tale, religious narratives, and literature worldview drew on these archetypal patterns, suggesting they express fundamental aspects of human experience and psychology. That transcend particular cultures and historical periods. Now let's go to the character types or archetypes. The hero protagonist who embarks on a quest faces trials and turns transform found in stories from Gilgamesh to Harry Potter, the innocent, pure, naive figure representing hope, potential, or moral clarity, often a child or childlike character. The shadow, um, dark double representing repressed or denied aspects of the self, monsters, double dangers, the protagonist is nemesis, the trickster, clever, mischievous figure who breaks rules and challenges authority. Examples: Loki, Anisai, Brer Rabbit, Puck, the mentor, wise guide who provides knowledge or magical gifts to the hero, Grandliff, Dumbledore, Mr. Miyagi, the mother, nurturing, life-giving figure, also the potentially devouring or controlling mother, each goddess, astaghfirullah, fairy, a godmother, astaghfirullah. But also smothering or destructive mother figures appear across cultures. This archetypal connects to primal experience of maternal care and dependence. Now let's go to the hero journey introduction. Joseph Campbell monomyth outlines a universal pattern underlines hero stories across cultures. The journey involves separation from the ordinary world, initiation through trials and transformation, and returns with knowledge or power to benefit the community. While not every story follows this pattern exactly, recognizing its elements helps us see connections between seemingly disparate narratives. Understanding this pattern doesn't reduce stories to a formula. Rather, it helps us see how individual stories vary the basic pattern, where they confirm and where they deviate, and what those choices mean. This Odyssey, Star Wars, The Matrix, and The Wizard of Ozel follow versions of this pattern, but each tells its own unique story within the archetypal structure. Now let's move to the hero journey, the three phases. Departure, call to adventure, refusal to the call, super natural aid, crossing the threshold into the unknown. Initiation, road of trials, meeting with the goddess, atonement with with the father, apotheosis, ultimate boon, return, refusal, or reducing to return, a magic flight, rescue from without, crossing, return, threehold, master of two worlds. Able to move between ordinary and extraordinary reality. Now let's go to symbolic archetypes. Beyond the character types, archetypal criticism identifies recurring symbols with universal reasons. Water, birth, rebirth, cleansing, the unconscious danger, fire, passion, destruction, purification, knowledge, enlightenment, the journey, life itself, quest for meaning, psychological development, the garden, paradise, innocence, fertility, harmony with nature, the forest, the unknown danger, testing the unconscious mind. Heroes enter forces to face challenges, confront themselves, and emerge transformed. The dark forest is where we encounter what we fear, both external and internal. Now let's move to situational archetypes. The quest search for something valuable, whether object, person, or knowledge. The in initiation, coming of age, loss of innocence, accepting it into community, the fall, descent from grace, loss of ignorance, moral failure, death and rebirth, transformation through crisis, symbolic death leading to new life. The battle, good versus evil, internal conflict, externalized. Cosmic battles between gods and demons, astaghfirullah, heroes and villains, light and darkness, appear across cultures. These external conflicts often symbolize internal psychology struggles or internal psychological struggles between different aspects of self. Now let's move to the value and the quotients of archetypal criticism. Archetypal criticism helps explain literature's emotional power and the cross-culture appeal. When we read a story and feel it touches something deep and familiar within us, we may be responding to archetypal patterns that connect to our shared human experience. This approach shows that great literature isn't just culturally specific but taps into universal human concern, the search for identity, the struggle between good and evil, the cycle of death and rebirth, and the need for meaning and purpose. However, critics caution against reducing complex works to simple archetypal formulas or ignoring the specific cultural contexts that shape how these universal patterns are expressed. At its best, archetypal criticism reveals the depth of literature's connection to the most fundamental aspects of human psychology and culture, showing how individual works participate in the great ongoing conversation of human storytelling. That stretches back to our earliest myth and forward to contemporary narratives. Now let's go for applying literary theory, reading strategies, introduction. Understanding literary theory intellectually is one thing. Applying it practically to actual cases is another. This section provides concrete strategies for active theory, informed reading. These techniques will help you move from passive consumption of text to engaged analytical interaction by developing systematic reading practices. You'll uncover more ethics, generate better interpretations, and write more sophisticated analysis. The key is to read with intention, armed with questions and frameworks that guide your attention. Think about the difference between watching a movie casually for entertainment, visual, or versus analyzing it for a film class. In the first case, you follow the plot and react emotionally. In the second, you also notice cinematography, editing, sound design, narrative structure, all the craft that creates the experience. Literary reading strategies train you to notice the craft while still experiencing the emotional and intellectual impact of the work. Now let's go to the three foundational reading practices. Keep a reading notebook. Maintain a dedicated notebook of or digital document for each text. Record the initial impressions, questions, notable passages, and the evolving interpretation. This creates a record of your reading process and provides material for essays. Annotate actively, mark up your text or take notes if you cannot write in a box. Highlight significant passages, notes literary devices, question confusing sections, draw connections, and record the emotional responses. Make your box a conversation. Now let's go to the track patterns. Watch for recurring images, symbols, phrases, and situations. The pattern often reveal themes and meaning are not immediately obvious. Create charts or diagrams mapping these recurrences. If water imagery appears repeatedly in a novel, that's significant to track each instance and consider what meanings accumulate. If certain words or phrases repeat, there is probably thematic significance. Patterns create meaning through accumulation and variation. Now let's move to the essential reading questions. Approach each text with a set of guiding questions. These prompts direct your attention to elements that matter for literary analysis and help you gather material for theoretical interpretation. Title significance. What does the title suggest? How does it remaining evolve as you read? Does it contain symbols, allusions, or irony? Return to the title after finishing it to see how it frames the whole work, narration, and the point of view. How tell this story? What perspectives do we get? what information is available for withheld, how reliable is the narrator, how would the story change with a different narrative voice, setting and atmosphere, where and when does the story take place? How does something influence plot and the character? What mood is created through descriptive language? Are there symbolic locations? Think how different Wuthering Heights would be if set in sunny Italy rather than the Yorkshire moors. Setting isn't backdrop, it's constructive of meaning. Now let's go to character development. How are characters introduced and developed, what motivates their actions, how do they change, what conflicts, internal and external, do they face, which characters are foils for each other, plot and structure, how is the narrative organized, what patterns, battles, or contrasts exist, where are climax and turning points, how do beginnings and the endings relate, are there structural summaries or symmetries, language and style, what is distinctive about the prose, what metaphors and imagery dominate, how formal or colloquial is the language, what is the sentence structure, how does style convey meaning. Hemingway's pair style suggests stoicism and emotional control. Faulkner's long, convoluted sentences mirror the complexity and entanglement of Southern history and psychology. Now let's move to formulating theory-based questions. Once you've read closely, apply theoretical frameworks by asking specific questions derived from each theory. Formalist questions: how do formal elements create unity? What tensions or paradoxes exist? How does a structure reflect content? What patterns of imagery appear? Reader response questions: how did I react emotionally to this text? Where did my expectations get disrupted? How does my background shape my reading? How different readers interpret this differently. And how What assumptions am I bringing to this context? The goal is becoming conscious of yourself as an active meaning maker, not a passive receiver. Now let's go to the historical culture questions. What historical context influenced this work? How does it reflect its era's values? What power structures appear? How might contemporary readers have responded? Psychological questions: what unconscious desires or fears are expressed, what archetypal patterns appear, how do characters psychologists develop, what do symbols reveal about the unconscious. Unconscious content. What defense mechanisms appear? How do characters handle internal conflicts between desire and prohibition? You reading the text as a window into human psychology, treating characters as subjects with complex inner lives, and treating textual patterns as potentially meaningful. in ways analogized to dreams. Now let's move to the value of multiple readings. First, readings provide plot comprehension and initial expressions. Second, readings allow you to notice foreshadowing, symbols, and the structural patterns you missed initially. Subsequent readings with specific theoretical frameworks yield even deeper insights. Great literature rewards reading because it's layered, meaningful, cannot be exhausted in a single encounter. These reading strategies transform you from a passive receiver into an active maker of meaning. By reading systematically with theoretical frameworks in mind, you will develop interactions that are both personal, meaningful, and academic rigorous. Remember that these strategies are not separate steps by interconnectedly practices that reinforce each other. The goal is to make theory informed reading second nature so that you automatically notice literary features, ask productive questions, and generate sophisticated interpretations. Then, writing with literary theory. But before that, we have to say that this doesn't mean reading becomes mechanical or joyless. In fact, these skills enhance enjoyment by revealing depths and complexities that make literature endlessly fascinating. You see more, understand more, and appreciate more. Reading becomes richer, not poorer, when you read actively and analytically. Now let's move to the writing with literary theory. Writing about literature using theoretical frameworks requires specific skills beyond generally essay writing. Um Literary analysis demanded that you balance a close attention to textual details with broader theoretical claims, support interpretations with evidence, with acknowledging complexity and ambiguity, and engage with text language while making arguments in your own clear prose. This section provides practical guidance for structuring, drafting, revision, theoretically informed literary essays that demonstrate sophisticated thinking and effective communication. The goal is producing essays that make original, well-supported arguments while engaging meaningfully with both literary texts and theoretical frameworks. Now let's move to the structure, ring the analytical essay. A strong literary analysis essay follows a clear structure that guides readers through your argument while maintaining focus on textual evidence and the theoretical framework while not rigidly formalic. Most successful essays contain recognizable components that work together to build persuasive interpretation. Think of essay structure as architecture. Different components serve different functions and they must fit together coherently. The introduction orients readers and presents your central claim. Body paragraphs develop that claim through specific arguments supported by Evidence, the conclusion synthesizes and extends your argument. Each part matters and they must connect logically. Now let's go to introduction with con, con contestable thesis. Begin by introducing the text and author, providing necessary context without excessive summary. Your fees should make a specific arguable claim about the text's meaning, function, or significance. Sometimes readers might reasonably disagree with weak Hamlet deals with revenge, strong Hamlet deals or delays results not from psychological paralyzed, but from ethical clarity about the immoral complexity of revenge. Body paragraphs with topic sentences. Each body paragraph should develop one aspect of your overall argument, beginning with a clear topic sentence that states the paragraphs the claim, follow with textual evidence, quotations, paragraphs, specific references, analysis of how this evidence supports your claim and connection to your theoretical framework. The pattern claim evidence analysis connection. This structure ensures your paragraph are substantive and persuasive rather than merely descriptive. Each paragraph should advance your argument, not just list observations. Thank you so much. We will continue, inshallah, the last session tomorrow, starting from integration of theory. So until next time, that's all for now.